"We need to talk," he said quietly. They sat in the living room, an awkward silence hanging between them. Onyeka couldn't even look at her. "What you did," he began, trying to find the words. "I don't understand. Why would you do this just days before our wedding?" Onyinye looked at him, unbothered. "Onyeka, it was just a goodbye to my ex. I needed closure." "Closure?" Onyeka felt his anger rising. "That's your explanation? Sleeping with him is your way of saying goodbye?" "Yes," she said simply, her tone almost dismissive. "I needed to end things on my terms, but it's over. Now I'm ready to marry you." Once upon a time, in the city, the eastern part of Nigeria, the early morning sun streamed through the curtains of Onyeka's apartment, casting a warm glow on his furrowed brow. He sat at the edge of his bed, still healing from what he had witnessed the night before. His hands shook as he held his phone, the urge to call off the wedding fighting with the pressure that weighed heavily on his shoulders. 3 days, just 3 days before he was supposed to marry Onyinye, and everything had changed. She hadn't even tried to hide it, not really. The scene played over in his head, almost too sure to accept. Onyinye, his bride-to-be, the woman he thought he would spend the rest of his life with, had been in bed with another man, and not just any man, her ex. Onyeka had walked into her apartment to surprise her with dinner, only to find the two of them locked in an intimate embrace. Shock paralyzed him, and before he could speak, they had noticed him standing there, frozen in the doorway. What is this?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Onyinye pulled herself up, hardly flustered, and covered herself with a bedsheet. The man beside her, whom Onyeka recognized immediately as her ex-boyfriend, didn't bother to hide a smirk. "Onyeka," Onyinye started calmly, "this isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. Onyeka had turned and walked out, his heart pounding, unsure of where to go or what to do. He didn't confront them, didn't scream or demand answers. He simply left, confusion and rage battling for control inside him. Now, sitting on the bed in his apartment, he replayed that awful moment in his mind. How could she? And just days before their wedding, the humiliation, the anger, and the betrayal surged through him like a wave. How was he supposed to marry her after this? His phone rang, snapping him back to reality. He glanced at the screen. Onyinye's mother, he hesitated, then picked up. "Onyeka," her voice was soft, as though she already knew. "I heard from Onyinye. There's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? Was she serious?" "There's nothing to misunderstand, ma. I saw them. I saw her with him." Onyeka's voice was shaking with anger, but he tried to remain respectful. He had always respected Onyinye's mother, even if his relationship with Onyinye had its ups and downs. I can't go through this. There was a brief silence on the other hand before her tone shifted. More direct. You know this is more than just a wedding, Onyeka. This is about family. Your father has already made arrangements, important ones. Onyeka's stomach turned. He knew exactly what she was referring to. His father, a well-respected businessman, had been angling for a major political position for months. This marriage was more than just a union between him and Onyinye. It was a merger between their families. A deal. His father's future was tied to this wedding, and the fallout from calling it off could be disastrous for him. The pressure was suffocating. But Ma, how can I marry her after what I saw? Onyeka's voice broke slightly. Can I trust her? She made a mistake, Onyeka, Onyinye's mother said with a sigh. You are both young. These things happen, but they don't have to ruin everything. Your father needs this marriage. Do you want to be the one to destroy his plans? Onyeka clenched his jaw. It wasn't just his father's plans. It was his future too. His father had already promised him a cushy position once everything was set. He had been raised to think strategically, to sacrifice his emotions for greater good. This was no ordinary wedding. It was a business deal, a stepping stone to a life of power and prestige. But how could he face Onyinye at the altar? How could he pretend like everything was normal? Later that afternoon, Onyeka found himself standing outside Onyinye's family home. His stomach churned with anxiety as he knocked on the door. Onyinye herself answered, her face calm, as if nothing out of the ordinary happened. We need to talk, he said quietly. They sat in the living room, an awkward silence hanging between them. Onyeka couldn't even look at her. What you did? He began, trying to find the words. I don't understand. Why? Why would you do this just days before our wedding? Onyinye looked at him, unbothered. Onyeka, it was just a goodbye to my ex. I needed closure. Closure? Onyeka felt his anger rising. That's your explanation? Sleeping with him is your way of saying goodbye? Yes, she said simply, a tone almost dismissive. I needed to end things on my terms, but it's over now. I'm ready to marry you. Onyeka stared at her, disbelief flooding his system. How could she be so casual about this? Was this what their marriage was going to be? A series of betrayals and excuses? You don't even see anything wrong with it, do you? He asked quietly. Onyinye shrugged. I don't see why it should matter. We both know this marriage isn't about love. It's about our families. It's about business. Onyeka felt the weight of her words settle over him like a shroud. She was right. This wasn't a marriage built on love or trust. It was an agreement between their parents, a way to secure their futures. But still, something in him rebelled against the cold logic of it all. Was this really the life he wanted? The day of the wedding arrived far too quickly. Onyeka stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, his stomach churning with dread. His father had spoken to him that morning, congratulating him on the union and reminding him of the bright future ahead. The unspoken pressure to move forward weighed heavily on his shoulders. He had thought about calling it off countless times, but every time he tried, he remembered the look in his father's eyes. Disappointment wasn't an option. "Are you ready?" his best man asked, walking into the room. Onyeka nodded, though the knots in his stomach told him otherwise. Church was packed with families, friends, and dignitaries. Onyeka stood at the altar, waiting for Onyinye to walk down the aisle. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind a whirlwind of doubt and anger. He still couldn't believe he was going through with this. The music began, and all eyes turned towards the door. Onyinye entered, dressed in a stunning white gown, her face serene and composed. She looked every bit the beautiful bride, but to Onyeka, the image was tainted. As she approached, Onyeka felt his breath catch in his throat. This was it. This was the moment he had to swallow his pride, his heart, and his hunger. He had to stand beside a woman who had betrayed him, smile for the cameras, and pretend that everything was perfect. When she reached the altar, she gave him a small smile, and for a moment, Onyeka's heart softened. But then the memory of her with her ex crashed over him, and the bitterness returned. The priest began the ceremony, and Onyeka found himself moving through it in a daze. He repeated the vows, though the words felt hollow. When it came time to kiss the bride, he hesitated for a fraction of a second before pressing his lips to hers, his stomach twisting. The reception was a grand affair, filled with laughter, music, and dancing. But Onyeka felt like a ghost watching it all from a distance. Onyinye danced and mingled, a smile radiant as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just entered into the most twisted contract of all. Later that night, after the guests had left and the celebrations had died down, Onyeka sat alone in their hotel suite, staring out the window at the city below. Onyinye emerged from the bathroom in a robe, her expression relaxed. "So," she said, sitting down beside him, "we did it." Onyeka didn't respond. He felt numb. "Look," Onyinye said, her voice soft. "I know this isn't what you wanted, but we both know why we are here. This marriage is for our families, for the future. We will get used to it." Onyeka turned to look at her, his chest tight. And what about us? Onyinye smiled slightly. There is no horse, Onyeka. Not in the way you're thinking. We are business partners now. That's all this is. Onyeka felt a deep, crushing sadness settle over him. He had known this wasn't going to be a fairy tale, but he didn't realize just how empty it would feel. As Onyinye got up to climb into the bed, Onyeka remained by the window, staring into the darkness. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. The contract had been sealed, not with love, but with silence. The morals I took from the story: the dangers of compromising values for power. Onyeka's decision to go through with the marriage, despite the betrayal, highlights how sacrificing personal values for external pressures such as family expectations or societal status can lead to emotional emptiness and regrets. Power and prestige should not come at the cost of one's dignity and self-respect. Marriages based on contracts, convenience, or family expectations without genuine emotional connections are hollow. Relationships need mutual respect, love, and understanding to thrive. Otherwise, they become business, like arrangements devoid of intimacy and fulfillment. Onyinye's justification for cheating by saying she was saying goodbye to her ex reflects a lack of emotional maturity. Closure should not involve crossing boundaries of commitment, especially when it causes harm to others. Onyeka, on his part, ignored significant red flags in his relationship because of external pressure from family and societal expectations. This demonstrates how ignoring such signs can result in a life of dissatisfaction and emotional strain. Love cannot be created or sustained through obligations alone. Both Onyeka and Onyinye are trapped in a marriage devoid of emotional connection, illustrating that love needs to be genuine and reciprocal to create a successful union. This story shows the danger of allowing societal and familial expectations to dictate personal life decisions. While societal approval and family support are important, they should not override an individual's happiness and sense of self-worth. To my young viewers intending to be married, note: marriage is not to be built on selfish reasons. It shouldn't be to please families or society. Remember, you are going to live in that marriage. No red flags should be ignored before going into the marriage. Thank you for watching my story. Comments are welcome in the comment section below. Please share with me what you love about the story and what you learned from the story. This is African Tales by Ewa. Please, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, kindly do so and share with your loved ones. Like my story. I appreciate your time spent on my channel. I do not take your support for granted. Until I come your way again with another interesting story. Bye for now.